More than 2 decades ago, Toyota rocked the world with a car that looked like a big step toward a greener future. But a lot has changed in 20 years. Toyota sold 10.5 million cars, SUVs, and trucks in 2021, the most of any automaker in the world.
That's right. As of 2021, Toyota, the world's largest automotive manufacturer, as measured by the number of vehicles sold. This is a tale of what will be one of the most epic falls from grace of all time, from the world's #1 automaker in 2021 to bankrupt before the end of the same decade. And Toyota will have absolutely no one, nothing else to blame other than their own incompetence, hubris, blindness, and stupidity. Toyota's demise will be the result of nothing but self-inflicted wounds. After all, it was about 15 years ago that Toyota partnered with Tesla on some early EV technology. Toyota themselves could have been a leader in the EV space, dominating the industry, with Tesla having a very small second place share. Instead, Toyota have already sealed their fate. Still today, refusing to accept the reality that the world is inevitably transitioning to EVs. Instead of pursuing this technology aggressively, the morons at Toyota are still today publicly claiming they're not sure if consumers want EVs. They're also saying they're not economical, they're too expensive, there's no charging infrastructure. Excuse, excuse, excuse. And yes, the collective clown show at Toyota still today continues to claim that they're pursuing multiple propulsion strategies because they're unsure about the future, including internal combustion engine vehicles, hybrid vehicles, hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, and maybe some electric vehicles as well. The writing is clearly on the wall, yet everyone at Toyota actually calling the shots appears to be completely illiterate. This fall from grace will not only be one of the most epic of all time, but the most thoroughly deserved. Toyota has no one, nothing to blame but their own incompetence. I've actually covered Toyota's demise a number of times in exclusive Patreon videos over the last few years. If you're not a Patreon member, you should definitely join. Check those out. You can join with the card in the corner or the link at the pinned comment. Every time Toyota's absolutely incompetent president makes a truly moronic statement, you're sure to find me roasting this dipshit over on Patreon. And if videos roasting incompetent morons isn't your thing, there's plenty of other content there as well.
And this behemoth, which operates in at least 170 countries, is now facing criticism that it's not moving fast enough to reduce carbon emissions.
I just want to draw the distinction here between Toyota not doing enough in terms of the environment and emissions versus Toyota not doing enough to stay in fucking business. We'll put the environmental stuff to the side. That's for another conversation. The reason that I'm criticizing Toyota and why I'm adamant they're doomed and will go bankrupt later this decade is because they do not know what the fuck they are doing. The people calling the shots at Toyota are absolutely, and I mean absolutely, incompetent. The cost of EVs is predictably declining over time. They are a commercial inevitability. Forget the environmental impact. Forget all of that stuff. Any automaker today planning on making internal combustion engine vehicles past the second half of this decade is absolutely doomed, because there will not be consumers wanting to buy ICE vehicles at that point in time, because they'll be so much cheaper to buy, just a sticker price, than a comparable ICE vehicle, and significantly cheaper to own and operate, that consumers who don't have a few screws loose will think to themselves, why would I spend more for an inferior product that's worse for the environment? Oh wait, I wouldn't. That'd be dumb. I'm not that dumb, so I'm not going to do it. Yet Toyota still have not figured this out. So 100% of my criticism is targeted at their incompetence, not seeing the writing on the wall, not making the right strategic moves, and still having not figured it out today in 2023. As I said, Toyota deserves everything they're going to get. And I feel bad for the employees, but the fact that no one within this company has stood up, said what needs to be said, done what needs to be done, and I truly don't know if the culture in Toyota is a bunch of yes men, a gigantic circle jerk, no dissent. Yeah, exactly, boss, you're a genius, boss, everything you say, boss, yes, that's a great idea, boss. I don't know if that's the culture, and these people actually know deep down that they're doomed, or if they're so dumb, they're living in such an echo chamber that they genuinely don't realize the world is transitioning to EVs, and it is a done deal. I'm not sure which is which, but in either case, Toyota has sealed their own fate.
Some have even said the company is opposing climate reduction efforts.
We believe a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work as we transition to this new future. We think, again, multiple products can meet the customer's needs, where they are in the different product needs, how they commute, etc.
It's 20 years and they're no longer innovative and they're no longer sustainable in our eyes.
Other large automakers like General Motors and Volkswagen have made big commitments to electric vehicles and have already released several models. Toyota markets only one electric vehicle, and it's sold only 232 so far in the US and about 1,600 globally.
Who'd have thought? Half-assed, and actually they didn't even half-ass. They quarter-assed the electric vehicle. They allowed a cat to name it by walking across a keyboard. I don't even know what the fucking name of this thing is. BYZ F420 FOAD. What the fuck name was that thing? Even the name is a joke. They let a cat walk across a keyboard. That's how they name this goddamn thing. Because they're not serious about electric vehicles. That's why. Imagine that. You make a piece of shit and people don't want to buy your piece of shit. Does that mean there's no demand for electric vehicles, or does that mean there's no demand for shitty electric vehicles? I'm not sure Toyota have quite figured out the very obvious answer to this question.
Top executives have repeatedly said the hype around EVs does not match the reality. In December of 2021, Toyota said it would invest $35 billion in fully electric vehicles. However, at the same time, it outlined an equal investment in hybrids and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles.
That's right. Just over 1 year ago, these fucking morons announcing equivalent amounts of investment in 3 different propulsion technologies, 2 of which have absolutely no future. I just do not understand how such a company can be so incompetent. Make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, this video will age exceptionally well. I am telling you now that Toyota will be bankrupt later this decade. Toyota doesn't know they'll be bankrupt later this decade. The stock market doesn't know Toyota will be bankrupt later this decade. But they sure fucking will, and I will be here to clip this video when it happens. Now, the caveat, of course, if they do get bailed out by the government, shout out to General Motors, then all bets are off. But a government bailout to avoid bankruptcy is still a bankruptcy in my books.
We're committed to being carbon neutral by 2050. We're moving that direction aggressively with many products, not just one, but with many products.
So the question is Toyota behind everyone else, or is it smart to be cautious? In 1997, Toyota rolled out the RAV4 EV. It was an electric version of the popular RAV4 crossover. Tesla was still years away from being founded, and EVs were extremely rare. Several more EVs followed, but none went into mass production. Toyota purchased a stake in Tesla in 2010. The 2 companies collaborated on a second-generation RAV4 EV in 2012. But as established automakers started switching to EVs, Toyota held back. In 2017, it sold all its shares in Tesla.
A strategically brilliant decision on Toyota's part, as you can see here. They made 460%. Oh, that's after they sold. That's awkward. It's almost like in 2017, Toyota didn't really believe in EVs. If they did, they would have recognized that owning a massive stake in the world's leading EV maker, who'd already established an unassailable lead, they probably would have realized too, maybe we should keep this instead of selling it. So evidence going back as far as 2017, that Toyota just did not see the inevitable future. Toyota's 2017 sale of their stake in Tesla was a huge red flag.
Toyota really kind of doesn't want to dive into anything too quickly and then have to waste billions upon billions of dollars investment. Also, culturally, Toyota, the Japanese automakers, are typically a little bit more cautious when it comes to new technologies. They want to do a lot of due diligence, and they want to make sure it's the right direction for the company.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Confirmation that not a single person working at Toyota has a pair of nuts. Explains a lot. Oftentimes, the riskiest thing you can do as a company or as an individual is to be petrified of risk. If you become complacent, comfortable, too scared to rock the boat, too scared to take any risks, you can bet your fucking bottom dollar somebody else who does take those risks, who does have a pair of balls, is going to put you out of business. This is exactly what's happening to Toyota.
Along with Ford, Toyota is one of the rare automakers that is still run by its founding family, which can contribute to a more conservative approach. But the sentiment is widespread among leaders across the company.
You famously said several years ago that you don't believe that there is a market that will accept a pure electric vehicle. Do you still believe that?
それはよく伺う質問なんですが、
That's a question I get asked a lot. I must say up front that we are not against electric vehicles, but in order for electric vehicles to cover long distances, they currently need to be loaded with a lot of batteries that take a considerable amount of time to charge. There's also the issue of battery life.
Another gigantic red flag all the way back in 2017. When asked about electric vehicles, Toyota's response in essence is, well, here's an excuse why they're not currently viable and it'll be lots of hard work to make them viable. So no, because excuse. While they're making excuses, others, shout out to Tesla, are finding a way. Once again, these fucking idiots deserve everything they're going to get.
He has a very specific viewpoint on electrification, which is that until the energy density of batteries reaches a certain point, and we're not there yet, there's no way that battery electric vehicles can actually compete on a firm footing with gasoline or diesel.
So I don't want to say this too loud, it might be embarrassing, but if that's true, why is it that Tesla's Model Y continues to be the #1 selling vehicle country after country after country after country after country? No, really. If what he says is true, why is Tesla's Model Y taking the world by storm, fast on its way to becoming the #1 selling vehicle on Earth by unit volume? Wouldn't that be a pretty decent data point that EVs are here, they're up to scratch, they have sufficient range, I mean, what other explanation do we have for Tesla selling many tens of billions of dollars of Model Y and Model 3? I'm really struggling. I think what Toyota's really trying to say is, at this point in time, we can't develop a compelling electric vehicle, and therefore, instead of actually doing the fucking work to make one, we're just going to sit here and throw our hands up and go, it's too hard, it's too fucking hard.
Toyota sells cars in markets all over the world, and those markets have different needs and constraints. Its light vehicle brands, Toyota and Lexus, currently offer more than 130 models between them. Toyota sells Lexus-branded cars in 90 countries, and Toyota-branded vehicles in 170. Of the nearly 8 million cars Toyota had sold worldwide for the year through October 2022, nearly 7 million were sold outside Japan. More than 184,000 sold in Africa, 400,000 in the Middle East region, and about 2 million in Asian countries other than Japan, including countries such as Pakistan and the Philippines. The electric infrastructure in at least some of these countries is not nearly as well developed as it is in other regions. 2/3 of the world's population without access to electricity live in sub-Saharan Africa. Another 17% live in South Asia. Much of the rest are located in the ASEAN and China region, Latin America, and Middle East and North Africa.
Ultimately, the customers will tell us what is the best powertrain at the right timing for them. The road may be bumpy as we move that way, be it infrastructure, be it cost of batteries, etc.
Hydrogen fuel cell vehicles are zero emission. They run on hydrogen and they emit small amounts of water. They have garnered a lot of criticism from battery enthusiasts. But Toyota has championed the technology in both light-duty passenger vehicles as well as in commercial ones. It co-developed a truck with Kenworth and demonstrated its capabilities at the Port of Los Angeles. It has also sold 20,000 units globally of the Mirai, a hydrogen fuel cell-powered car. Toyota divides its alternative powertrains into two categories: zero-emission ones like hydrogen and battery electric, and carbon-reducing ones like hybrids, which run on a combination of gasoline-burning engine and battery-powered electric motors.
The hybrid didn't dramatically alter the driver experience. It actually enhanced it by reducing the amount of trips to the gas station because it was more fuel efficient.
When it launched the Prius in Japan in 1997, Toyota ushered in the era of the mainstream hybrid vehicle. It has sold 20 million hybrid cars around the world, and 5.4 million of them in the US to date.
25% of our current market share of our US sales is hybrid. We have hybrids from Corolla through RAV4. 100% of Siennas, 100% of Sequoias are hybrid, and even the recently launched Tundra hybrid.
They think that as the batteries improve, the hybrids get better and better, and we creep towards that point where the batteries are good enough that then actually it's better than a system that is hybridized.
Once again, Toyota clearly has not got the memo. Tesla is already there. Toyota seems to be under the impression if they just sit on their hands and wait long enough, miraculously, their own technology will suddenly be compelling enough to be pure electric at some point in the future. It's your responsibility to drive the costs down, to scale up production, to innovate in terms of manufacturing, to manufacture your own compelling electric vehicles that consumers actually want to buy. That's your job. You don't just sit and wait until magically, suddenly, someone else does it for you. That's how you end up going bankrupt later this decade.
Toyota's argument in brief has long been that electric vehicles are too expensive, the batteries aren't able to hold enough energy, they take too long to charge, and the charging infrastructure isn't sufficient yet.
In other words, wah. It's too hard. It will require effort. We will actually have to do something. Therefore, too hard basket. Wah. Here's some excuses. Pathetic, incompetent morons. I have absolutely no respect for people or companies who, rather than finding a way, find excuses. Their default behavior is to reach for an excuse rather than try to solve a problem. This is neither the way to live your life or to run a business. Unless a shitty life of underachievement and mediocrity is what you're after, or if you're a company, unless you're planning to go bankrupt later this decade.
The problem with this point of view is that the world has moved on, even though they're right in a way from an engineering principles perspective. There are other things that have happened in the interim, manufacturing capability, mining capability, new advances in lithium-ion battery, and all of a sudden, their calculation is a little off.
I think by a little off, he means entirely off. So off, in fact, that Toyota, once again, have sealed their fate and will be bankrupt later this decade. The truth is, I don't think Toyota actually did any calculations. I don't think the calculations were off. I just don't think they actually did any.
Toyota rival Volkswagen Group said in 2021 it expects EVs to achieve cost parity with gasoline-powered cars by 2025. Globally, in 2021, EVs made up about 5% of the market, but they were higher in some places and outpaced expectations.
They will be between 5 and 10%, probably 6 or 7%. Growth in China and Europe have been extremely strong. okay, for electric vehicles. I would say even stronger than I expected in Europe, mostly in Germany.
There is also a new business case for EVs. The electrification of the entire vehicle works hand in hand with the computerization of the vehicle. That has allowed car companies to think of a vehicle much more as a high-tech hardware device like a mobile phone. Governments are also pushing EV adoption, in China, the European Union, and the United States, to name a few. Many are offering generous incentives for companies and buyers.
Even if they don't make sense from an engineering standpoint yet, they certainly make sense from an economic standpoint with incentives.
Toyota has historically had the biggest share of the California car market, the largest statewide car market in the U.S. Data from the California New Car Dealers Association shows Toyota lost share in the first half of 2022 over 2021.
Now, I don't want to spoil the rest of the movie, but guess what? This will be the same story for every half of every year for the rest of this decade until Toyota is no longer in business. They will continue to lose market share, quarter after quarter, year after year. Why? Because they're not making what consumers want. They don't have plans to make what consumers want in the future. If they're not making what consumers want, consumers won't be buying from them. They still haven't figured it out. It's unbelievable.
Tesla went from less than 5% share to almost 11%. All electrified vehicles, including hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and fully electric vehicles, were just under 30% of sales in California as of November 2022. Fully electric vehicles alone accounted for about 15% of the market. That is triple the national all-electric vehicle market share of about 5%.
When you look at a very key and profitable market like California for Toyota, Tesla's taking share from them there, and Toyota needs to rally back with that, starting with the Lexus brand, but also with the mainstream Toyota brand.
Catherine Garcia is a clean transportation activist at the Sierra Club, an environmental advocacy group based in California.
Their goals have been mismatched based on what we're seeing in terms of production, in terms of innovation, and we're just really disappointed that Toyota has not stepped up and met its competitors in accelerating this transition to cleaner vehicles.
Sierra Club also says Toyota, even more than other automakers, has opposed climate legislation around the world. Influence Map, a UK-based climate-focused think tank, identified Toyota as one of the companies most aggressively lobbying against climate policies in 2021.
The top three were Chevron, Exxon, and Toyota. And frankly, it's just extremely inappropriate for an automaker that has the means to be investing in cleaner vehicles and supporting this transition to electric vehicles to be stepping in the way of climate policies.
Environmental activist group Greenpeace placed Toyota at the bottom of a list for its decarbonization efforts. In a statement to CNBC, Toyota said, "To set the record straight, Toyota has never lobbied for lower emission standards nor to lower incentives for any particular technology in the U.S. We have consistently asked the government for fair policies that do not favor one technology over another in the pursuit of eliminating carbon emissions."
We do believe in an all-electric future. We're investing $35 billion from 2021 to 2030 in battery electric vehicles. But also, while we go through this transition, we're also electrifying the rest of our portfolio, increasing our hybrid volume and plug-in hybrid volume to maximize the benefit of carbon reduction.
Were you guys paying attention? Because I sure fucking was. We do believe in an all-electric future, but we're not investing in one. Here's all the other shit we're investing in as well, instead of just an all-electric future.
Toyota's new $35 billion investment, announced in December 2021, includes a plan to introduce 30 electric models by 2030. That is just under a quarter of the more than 130 models it currently makes. The plan includes about $14.6 billion of spending on battery technology and $5.9 billion in the US alone. It also includes a planned $3.8 billion battery factory in North Carolina. In April 2022, Toyota launched the bZ4X, the only battery electric vehicle it sells.
Link in description. Just making sure everyone got that. Toyota, currently the world's largest automotive manufacturer by unit volume, has a whopping one electric vehicle model available in 2023. Once again, these incompetent morons have sealed their own fate, and they deserve everything that's coming. How? How does the world's largest automotive manufacturer in 2023 have just one electric vehicle available for consumers to purchase, and it's a steaming pile of shit? I can answer that question. Incompetence, hubris, idiocy, and total blindness. I don't know what else to say. Moron's gone a moron.
The launch comes about a decade after Tesla launched its flagship Model S sedan and 5 years after Tesla's smaller Model 3.
I think they've realized that they do need to pay more attention to all electric than they have in the past.
While the company is making lofty promises, not everyone thinks Toyota can catch up.
There is a learning curve around how to build a good EV. You can't just out of the box be great at it.
The company is gargantuan, and it has a massive research and development budget.
No one doubts the prowess, the technical prowess, and the ability to develop technology that Toyota has.
But research and development is just one piece of the total.
There's a manufacturing, element to it, and there's a supply chain element to it. There's these arrangements with battery suppliers. There's people inside your organization. There are servicing that needs to be done at the dealership. There's a lot of things that if you started earlier, you're farther ahead.
North American EVP Jack Hollis said in an interview with the Automotive Press Association in August 2022 that mainstream consumer demand for electric vehicles does not match the rhetoric around them. After 25 years on the market, hybrids have only about 6% share of new vehicles. EVs are half that. The recent federal bipartisan infrastructure law set aside $7.5 billion to build a network of 500,000 electric chargers. However, a recent report from consulting firm McKinsey & Company said that would still be a far cry from what would be needed to meet demand. The government wants 50% EV penetration in the U.S. by 2030. McKinsey estimates that would require 1.2 million public chargers and 28 million private ones to sustain an EV fleet of that size. That is about 20 times the number of chargers the U.S. had as of April 2022.
If you were to judge electric vehicle sales by the amount of articles and hype around them that are written, we would be in 90% all-electric vehicle society. But the reality is that electric vehicles are still a very niche player, and we are going to have hybrids, plug-in hybrids, ICE engines with gasoline for decades to come.
Get this guy a job at Toyota ASAP. He'll be right at home. Now, in fairness, maybe he's talking about these vehicles still being on roads, but that's not how I interpret these comments. My interpretation is that consumers will still be buying these things, therefore automotive manufacturers will still be making these things for decades to come, which is a good point. After all, today, the horse and carriage is still a very popular form of transportation as well.
We still think that in 10 years, 50% of new vehicle sales will be gasoline.
Get this guy a job at Toyota too. Fucking hell, man. Did he really just say that? So in 10 years, in 2033, he's estimating that half of new vehicles sold will still have an internal combustion engine. My bet is that in 10 years' time, this guy will no longer have any credibility.
And if you look at the global footprint, that is almost certainly going to be true, because you're not going to see in, Nigeria, in, Iran, in Indonesia, a 50% market share for electric vehicles, period. And those are big markets.
So let's be clear. Certainly, some countries, some regions of the world, generally the poorer countries, typically will continue to use fossil fuel-based sources of transportation for longer, but here's my prediction. They won't be buying new ICE vehicles. They'll be repairing, reusing, and maintaining existing ICE vehicles. It will not make economic sense past 2030, probably past about 2027, to be making ICE vehicles in the first place. And those companies that stubbornly continue to do so will be bankrupt by about 2030. So there'll be nobody making new ICE vehicles in the first place. As I mentioned, different parts of the world will transition at different paces. Huge portions of Africa, large sections of South America in particular, and some regions in Asia will be very slow to adopt electric vehicles. But this is for economic reasons. The new vehicle market in these regions is extremely small. In addition, the average selling price of vehicles in these regions is approximately all. So they'll be the late adopters. This is inevitable, but it's so silly to assume that just because some consumers will be later to adopt this technology than others, that there'll still be a market for new ICE vehicles when it no longer makes economic sense for companies to be producing them.
In the meantime, industry watchers say Toyota will be working hard to manage criticism that it is not doing enough to fight carbon pollution or develop green products.
If my guess is right, they will be consistently beating the message that, look, all these hybrids that we sell, we actually reduce fuel consumption by way more than all these other people trying to sell EVs. Watch that message. That message is going to be repeated and repeated and repeated by them over the next 10 years.
Until they go bankrupt. Now, in fairness, Toyota is probably going to go, hey, look at us, hybrids, yeah, we're cool, whatever. That is a sideshow. What matters is, are they going to be able to stay in business throughout the decade? And the answer is no. If Toyota is continually focused on producing ICE vehicles and hybrids and hydrogen fuel cell and some electric vehicles, they're unequivocally fucked. They spread themselves too thin. They're not focused. They have too many different irons in the fire, too much stuff going on. They won't benefit enough from economies of scale. There's too much complexity, too much variety, too much choice for consumers. And Toyota's strategy moving forward throughout the decade is to A, spread themselves thin, and B, pull the company in 3 or 4 different, completely independent directions at the same time. As I said earlier in this video, from the #1 automaker on earth by unit volume in 2021 to bankrupt before the end of the decade, Toyota's fall from grace is entirely their own fault. They have no one or nothing else to blame but their own incompetence, idiocy, hubris, and blindness. I feel bad for Toyota employees, but this company is going to get everything they deserve. I'm telling you, it is too fucking late. Even if Toyota immediately decided to go all in on EVs, it'd take them at least half a decade to even ramp up some meaningful volume of production on EVs that some consumers might actually want to buy. And while they're doing that, Tesla will continue to pull further ahead and eat their fucking lunch. It's just so sad to see a company who almost 15 years ago partnered with Tesla, owned a stake in the company, could have leveraged their technology. Toyota could have been Tesla. But every step of the way, they've punched themselves in the face, said, ow, that hurts, punched themselves in the face again, and they still can't figure out why their nose is bleeding. So I guess this would be the perfect time to share my condolences. Dear Toyota, rest in fucking peace. Don't forget, I've covered the demise of Toyota many times over the last 3 years on Patreon and exclusive videos. You can search by tags for Toyota, you'll find a bunch of them. If you're not a member of Patreon, you can join with the card in the corner or the link at the pinned comment. And don't forget, you'll gain access to over 275 exclusive videos, my Tesla stock price targets, and optional access to my Tesla valuation model. So, see you over on Patreon. Love ya.